The sun hung low over the dusty playground of Willow Creek Elementary, casting long shadows that stretched like accusing fingers across the cracked asphalt. It was recess, the kind of ordinary afternoon where laughter usually echoed off the brick walls, but today a piercing scream shattered the air. 9-year-old Sofia Ramirez clutched her backpack like a shield. Her small face twisted in fury and tears as she pointed at the school nurse's office door. "She's lying! Everyone's lying!" Sofia's voice cracked, raw with desperation, drawing a circle of wide-eyed children and frozen teachers. Inside the office, Nurse Emily Harper stood pale and composed, her scrub still stained with faint traces of yesterday's chaos. But the whispers had already spread, like wildfire. Rumors that she'd faked an emergency to cover her own mistakes, that little Noah, Sofia's brother, hadn't really been saved from that terrible accident on the school bus. The principal, a stern woman with a clipboard, knelt beside Sofia, murmuring soothing words, but the girl's cries only grew louder, her tiny fists pounding the ground. "My brother almost died, and now they're saying it was nothing. She saved him. I know she did." From the edge of the parking lot, the low rumble began, faint at first, like distant thunder rolling in from the horizon. Ethan "Ghost" Malone, a weathered man in his late 40s, with scars etched deep into his forearms from a life on the road, eased his Harley to a stop at the school's chain-link fence. He'd been passing through Willow Creek on a solo ride, the kind he took to outrun the ghosts of his past, nights in desert foxholes, promises whispered over dying campfires to brothers in arms who'd never come home. But something about the scream pulled him in, a magnetic tug that bypassed reason. Ethan killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the chaos inside the fence. He wasn't one for crowds or causes anymore. After losing his squad in that forgotten skirmish overseas, he'd sworn off oaths that bound him to anyone but his own regrets. Yet here he was, boots crunching gravel as he approached the gate, his leather vest patched with the faded emblem of the Iron Vipers, a motorcycle club he'd walked away from years ago, but that had never truly let him go. The teachers turned, their faces a mix of suspicion and alarm, as Ethan loomed there, all 6'3" of him, tattoos peeking from his sleeves like war stories in ink. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice gravelly from too many miles and too few words, eyes locking on Sofia's trembling form. The principal straightened, blocking his path. "This is a school matter, sir. Please leave." But Sofia looked up, her dark eyes meeting his, and in that instant, something unbreakable stirred. "They're saying my brother wasn't hurt bad, that the nurse lied to get attention. But I saw it. The bus swerved. And Noah—" He stopped breathing. "She brought him back." Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd seen that look before, on the faces of kids in war zones, clinging to truth amid the lies of adults who bent rules for convenience. Without a word, he pulled out his phone, dialing a number he hadn't touched in a decade. "Rally the Vipers," he said simply when the line connected. "All 85 of us. We've got a promise to keep." As the first bikes crested the hill minutes later, their engines a symphony of growls that vibrated through the ground, the schoolyard fell into stunned hush. Ethan had made that promise long ago, back when the Iron Vipers weren't just a club, but a brotherhood forged in the fires of shared loss. During his last deployment, Emily Harper, then a young combat medic, had pulled him from a wrecked Humvee, her hands steady amid the smoke and screams, saving not just his body, but the fragment of soul he'd thought lost. "You owe me nothing," she'd said then, but Ethan had sworn on his life. If she ever needed him, the Vipers would ride. He'd buried that vow under layers of isolation, drifting from town to town. But Sofia's cry had unearthed it, raw and insistent. Now, as the convoy poured into the parking lot, leather-clad riders dismounting with disciplined precision, their bikes lined up like steel sentinels, the air thickened with the scent of exhaust and resolve. Emily emerged from the office, her face ashen, surrounded by skeptical administrators who'd already called the local sheriff. "This is escalating," the principal hissed. "We have protocols." But Ethan stepped forward, his presence parting the crowd like a wake. "Ma'am," he said to Emily, voice low but carrying the weight of thunder, "tell me what happened, all of it." She hesitated, glancing at Sophia, who nodded fiercely. The words tumbled out then. The bus crash the day before, how Noah had been trapped under debris, his breaths shallow and fading. Emily had performed CPR on the spot, her training kicking in amid the panic, stabilizing him until the ambulance arrived. But now, budget cuts and a lazy investigation had twisted the story. Claims of exaggeration to justify overtime, whispers of incompetence to shift blame from the district. "They want to suspend me," Emily whispered. "Say I endangered the kids by overreacting." Sophia's eyes welled up again. "But you saved him, Nurse M. I was there." The Vipers formed a loose circle, their leader, Jax, a grizzled veteran with a limp from the same war that scarred Ethan, nodding silently. They'd come from 3 states away, phones buzzing with the call to arms, leaving jobs and lives because one man's word was their bond. Ethan knelt beside Sophia, the playground dirt gritty under his knees. "Kid, promises like that? They don't fade. Your nurse kept hers yesterday. Now we're keeping ours." As the sheriff's cruiser pulled up, lights flashing against the fading sun, the bikers stood firm, not with aggression, but an unyielding quiet, a wall of honor against the tide of doubt. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Who were these men? Strangers, yet they moved with the precision of family, engines idling like a heartbeat. By dusk, as statements were taken and the truth began to surface, dashcam footage from a parent's car confirming Emily's heroism, the convoy remained. A testament to redemption's quiet power. Ethan watched Sophia hug her brother, now out of the hospital, his small hand waving from the car window. The girl had screamed against the lies, and in doing so awakened a forgotten oath. For Ethan, it was more than proof. It was the first crack in the armor he'd built around his heart, hinting at the rides yet to come. The battles for justice that would bind them all. The desert wind whispered through the lot, carrying the promise of dawn, where loyalty would face its true test. The sheriff's cruiser idled under the sodium glow of the parking lot lamps, its red and blue lights pulsing like a hesitant heartbeat against the encroaching night. Deputy Lucas Grant stepped out, his uniform crisp, but his eyes weary from too many shifts in a town that prized quiet over confrontation. He scanned the line of Harleys, their chrome catching the last glimmers of sunset, and the cluster of bikers who stood not in threat, but in quiet vigil. Ethan Malone felt the weight of those stares, the unspoken questions hanging in the air, thick as the cooling exhaust. He'd parked his bike at the front, a black beast scarred from years of loyal service, and now he leaned against it, arms crossed, watching Lucas approach with measured steps. "Evening, folks," Lucas said, his voice carrying the drawl of someone who'd grown up on these back roads. He nodded toward Emily, who hovered near the principal's side, her scrubs rumpled and her hands clasped tight. "Heard there's been some excitement. Mind telling me what's really going on here?" The principal launched into her version first, a tidy narrative of administrative review, overzealous reporting, and the need for calm. But Sophia, still clutching Noah's hand as he sat bundled in a blanket on the curb, piped up from the sidelines. "It's not excitement. They're trying to make Nurse M look bad, but she fixed my brother when no one else could." Noah, pale but alert, his small chest rising steadily now, nodded solemnly, his eyes wide on the deputy. Ethan stepped forward, his boots scraping the asphalt with a sound like gravel under tires. "Deputy, this isn't about causing trouble, it's about setting the record straight." He glanced at Emily, who met his gaze with a flicker of gratitude mixed with fear. In the dim light, her face revealed the toll. The faint shadows under her eyes from sleepless nights, the way her fingers trembled slightly when she spoke. She'd come to Willow Creek 5 years ago, fresh from her days in the field hospitals overseas, seeking a quieter life where her skills could mend small hurts instead of battlefield wounds. But the bus incident had dragged her back into the storm. A mechanical failure on the old district vehicle, debris scattering like shrapnel, and Noah trapped, his breaths turning to gasps amid the screams. Emily's CPR had been instinctive, her compressions steady until color returned to his lips. But the aftermath? Accusations from higher-ups, eager to bury liability under layers of paperwork. Lucas rubbed his jaw, eyeing the Vipers. Jax hung back with the others, his limp more pronounced in the chill, but his presence commanded respect, a silent anchor for the group. These weren't the rogue riders of old tales. They were men like Ethan, marked by service and loss. Their vests bearing patches earned in dust-choked rallies and midnight vigils for fallen comrades. 85 of you for a schoolyard spat? Lucas asked, skepticism edging his tone. Ethan met it head-on. Not a spat, a promise. Years back, this woman pulled me out of hell. I told her the Vipers would ride if she ever called. She didn't, but that girl did. He nodded toward Sophia, who straightened, her defiance undimmed. As the deputy jotted notes, the air grew heavier with the scent of impending rain, distant thunder rumbling like an echo of the engines that had brought them here. Emily finally spoke, her voice soft but clear, cutting through the murmurs. I didn't exaggerate, Deputy. The bus hydraulics failed. Eyewitnesses saw it skid off the shoulder, pinning Noah under the side panel. I cleared his airway, started compressions right there on the grass. The paramedics confirmed it. His vitals were crashing. She pulled a crumpled report from her pocket, the paper edges worn from her grip. But the principal interjected, her clipboard a barrier. The district's audit says otherwise. Overtime logs don't match, and the bus was inspected clean. This could be seen as fabricating for sympathy. The words landed like a punch, and Ethan's fists clenched at his sides, not in rage, but in the old ache of injustice he'd felt in those foreign sands, where truths were twisted to protect the wrong people. He remembered Emily's hands on him then, blood smeared and sure, whispering, "Breathe, soldier. You've got people waiting." And that promise had chained him to her, even as he'd wandered alone, nursing regrets over lost brothers like Samuel and David, names etched in his memory like tattoos on his soul. Now, seeing her cornered, he felt the pull again. A call to stand, not fight. One of the Vipers, a broad-shouldered rider named Ryan with a salt-and-pepper beard, stepped up quietly, holding out his phone. "Deputy, we pulled strings on the way here. Got a contact at the regional hospital. Veteran Buddy runs records. Noah's chart shows hypoxic episode. Full revival on site. Matches her story." Lucas took the device, scrolling through the digital file, his brow furrowing deeper. The parking lot had filled with onlookers now, parents arriving late, teachers lingering, the hum of curiosity buzzing like cicadas. Sophia tugged at Emily's sleeve. "See, they're helping, like you helped Noah." But tension coiled tighter as another vehicle approached, this one a sleek SUV from the district office, its tires crunching to a halt. Out stepped Administrator Victoria Klein, a sharp-featured woman in a tailored suit, her heels clicking authoritatively. "This circus ends now," she declared, eyes sweeping the bikers with disdain. "Nurse Harper, you're on leave pending full investigation. And you," she pointed at Ethan, "whatever this is, it's intimidation. I'll have the full force down here if you don't disperse." The Vipers shifted, a subtle ripple of leather and resolve, but Jax raised a hand, stilling them. Ethan's gaze locked on Victoria, seeing the corruption he'd fought abroad, the kind that buried heroes under bureaucracy to save faces. Rain began to patter then, light at first, spotting the asphalt like tears on stone. Ethan ignored it, stepping closer to Emily. "Ma'am, we're not here to intimidate, we're here to witness. Pull the dashcam from that parent's car, check the bus logs yourself. Truth doesn't hide from riders who've chased it across deserts." Victoria's lips thinned, but Lucas, glancing at the phone again, cleared his throat. "Might be worth a look, ma'am. Evidence is evidence." As the group stood firm, water beading on jackets and helmets, the first real fracture appeared in the wall of doubt. Sophia smiled up at Ethan, her small hand slipping into his, a bridge between the lost boy he'd been and the man reclaiming his oath. Night deepened, the rain steadying into a rhythm that washed the lot clean, carrying away the dust of accusations. Inside the school office, lights flickered on as statements piled up, the vipers waiting like guardians at the gate. Ethan felt the stirrings of something deeper, a redemption, not just for Emily, but for himself. The ghosts of unkept promises fading in the downpour. Yet dawn loomed with greater trials. Whispers from the district hinted at deeper rot, forces that would test their loyalty to the breaking point. The engines might roar again, but for now the quiet stand held, a promise etched in the wet gleam of chrome. The rain had turned the parking lot into a mirror of fractured lights, reflecting the sheriff's cruiser and the district SUV in shimmering pools that distorted the scene like half-remembered dreams. Ethan Malone stood unmoving, water streaming down his leather vest, tracing paths over the faded iron viper's patch that clung to his chest like an old scar. Beside him, Sophia huddled under Emily's arm, the girl's defiance softened by the chill, but not extinguished. Her small frame, a quiet anchor in the storm. Noah, wrapped in a borrowed jacket from one of the bikers, leaned against his sister, his breaths even now, a silent testament to the life Emily had pulled back from the edge. The vipers formed a ragged semicircle, their boots planted firm, engines off, but the air still humming with the memory of their arrival, a low vibration that seemed to pulse through the ground like a shared heartbeat. Deputy Lucas Grant emerged from the school office, his notepad slick with rain, face etched with the kind of fatigue that came from bridging worlds that didn't want to meet. He approached Victoria Klein first, her suit jacket now draped over her arm, hair frizzing at the edges, despite her efforts to maintain composure. "Ma'am, we've got the dashcam footage from that parent's vehicle," Lucas said, his voice cutting through the patter of drops on metal. "It shows the bus skidding. Hydraulics blew out clear as day. Kid was pinned, Nurse Harper on him in seconds. Matches her account." Victoria's eyes narrowed, the lines around her mouth tightening like a trap springing shut. Footage can be manipulated, and those overtime logs? They're the real issue here. This isn't about heroism, it's about accountability in a system stretched thin. Ethan felt the words like gravel under his tires, grinding against the truth he'd chased across too many horizons. He shifted his weight. The rain, masking the ache in his knee from an old shrapnel wound, a souvenir from the same sands where Emily had first bound him with her steady hands. Back then, in the acrid smoke of a convoy ambush, she'd knelt beside him, ignoring the chaos to press a compress to his side. Her voice a calm anchor amid the roar of gunfire and the cries of men like Jonathan and Lucas, brothers who'd fallen that day, their names now ghosts in his ledger of regrets. "Hold on," she'd said, her eyes meeting his through the haze. "Promises keep us going." He'd nodded, blood bubbling on his lips, and sworn silently that her light wouldn't fade alone. But war had scattered them. He'd returned to the road, the vipers, his fractured family, while she sought solace in small-town scrubs. Now that vow resurfaced, raw as the rain on his skin. Jax limped forward, his cane tapping the wet asphalt with deliberate rhythm, drawing eyes like a drumbeat in the downpour. The Viper's leader, with his silver-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too many sunrises over foxholes, placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder, a gesture heavy with unspoken history. Deputy, Jax rumbled, his voice like distant thunder. We've got more than footage. Ryan here pulled hospital records, but I reached out to an old contact, mechanic who services those district buses. Says the maintenance logs were fudged, parts swapped out months ago to cut costs. This wasn't an accident. It was waiting to happen. Ryan nodded, holding up his phone again, the screen glowing faintly against the night. The group leaned in slightly, the rain a curtain that blurred the edges of suspicion into something sharper, more urgent. Sophia looked up at Emily, her voice a whisper lost in the storm but clear in intent. You fixed him, like you fix everyone. Why won't they believe? Emily's throat worked, swallowing back the weight of isolation she'd carried since arriving in Willow Creek, nights replaying the bus crash, the metallic tang of fear in her mouth as Noah's chest stilled under her palms, the desperate count of compressions echoing her battlefield rhythms. She'd chosen this life to heal without the shadow of loss, but the district's probe had unearthed old doubts. Was she overreacting again, like in the war, when she'd pushed for evacuations that saved some, but couldn't save all? Victoria's gaze flicked to her, cold and appraising. Belief isn't the point, young lady. Procedures are. Nurse Harper's actions, while well-intentioned, bypassed protocol. We can't have vigilantes in scrubs or on bikes undermining authority. The word vigilantes hung there, igniting a spark in the Viper's ranks. A murmur rippled through them, leather creaking like sails in wind, but Ethan raised a hand, stilling the tide. He'd learned in the desert that fury won no wars, loyalty did, quiet and unyielding. Authority, he echoed, stepping into the circle of light from the office door, his shadow long and unwavering. I know about that. Lost good men to it once. Orders from suits who never saw the dust. But this nurse, she didn't bypass. She bridged, saved a boy, and now they're burying her for it. His eyes met Lucas's, a veteran's recognition passing between them. The deputy's uniform hiding his own service stripes, perhaps, or just the weariness of enforcing rules that bent under pressure. Lucas sighed, rain dripping from his hat brim. Look, I'm not the enemy here, but the district's got pull. Superintendent's office is already spinning this as a PR mess. If we don't get solid proof, it'll stick. As if on cue, another set of headlights pierced the gloom, a tow truck rumbling in to haul the damaged bus from its impound spot nearby. The vehicle loomed in the distance, its side crumpled like paper, a ghost of the chaos that had started it all. One of the Vipers, a wiry rider named Tyler with grease-stained knuckles, broke from the line. Let me take a look. Worked on rigs like that in the service. Might spot something the logs missed. Victoria bristled, but Lucas waved him toward the truck, curiosity overriding caution. Under the truck's underbelly, flashlight beams danced like fireflies, illuminating rusted bolts and frayed cables that whispered of neglect. Tyler's voice carried back, low and certain. Tampered. Brakes weren't just worn. Someone cut corners deep. The revelation landed amid the rain's steady drum, fracturing the night's tension into shards of outrage. Sophia's eyes widened, hope flickering like the distant lightning. Emily exhaled, a breath she'd held since the crash, her hand finding Noah's. Ethan watched, the water cold on his face, but his resolve warming, a fire rekindled from embers long thought cold. This stand wasn't just for her, it was for the promises that outlasted storms, the ones that turned strangers into kin, lies into light. As the tow truck groaned away, carrying potential evidence into the unknown, the group huddled closer, the Viper's presence a shield against the deepening shadows. Whispers of deeper corruption surfaced, rumors of district funds siphoned for private gains, the bus a symptom of rot that reached high. Ethan felt the pull of it, the road ahead twisting toward confrontation, where loyalty would demand more than rain-soaked vigils. Dawn crept nearer, grey and unforgiving, promising trials that would test the bonds forged in dust and oaths. For now, though, they held the line, the scent of wet earth and resolve mingling in the air, a prelude to the ride that would redefine them all. The first hints of dawn bled through the storm clouds, painting the sky in bruised purples and greys that mirrored the exhaustion etched into every face in the parking lot. Ethan Malone wiped rain from his brow, the droplets cold against his skin, as the tow truck's tail lights faded into the distance like retreating spectres. The air hung heavy with the earthy scent of soaked asphalt and the faint metallic tang of the bus's undercarriage, a reminder of the neglect that had nearly claimed Noah. The boy now slept fitfully in the back of Emily's car, his small form curled under a Viper's spare jacket, while Sophia sat vigil beside him, her eyes heavy-lidded but alert, as if sleep were a luxury she couldn't afford until justice settled. Deputy Lucas Grant lingered near the school office door, his radio crackling faintly with dispatch chatter, the static a low underscore to the group's uneasy quiet. He'd sent Tyler's findings, photos of the tampered brakes, frayed lines that screamed sabotage, up the chain, but the response had been terse. Hold the scene, await inspectors from the county seat. Victoria Klein paced nearby, her phone pressed to her ear. A voice clipped as she argued with someone on the other end, words like liability and containment slicing through the morning mist. Ethan watched her, the way her gestures sharpened with each passing minute, a predator circling wounded prey. He'd seen that look in command tents overseas, where truths were bartered like ammunition to shield the guilty. Jax eased closer to Ethan, his limp swallowed by the night's fatigue, the cane now tucked under his arm like an afterthought. The Viper's leader had aged like fine leather, cracked but enduring, his face a map of rallies won and lost, brothers mourned around campfires that burned too bright and too brief. "This runs deeper than a bad bus," Jax murmured, voice rough as gravel under tires. Heard whispers on the ride in. District's been skimping on everything from books to brakes to line their pockets. That Klein woman's no fool, she's the gatekeeper. Ethan nodded, the weight of it settling in his chest like an old rucksack. The promise he'd made to Emily all those years ago hadn't just been for her hands on his wounds. It was for the light she carried. The kind that pierced corruption's fog. Now, standing here with rain pooling at his boots, he felt the ghosts stir. Samuel's laugh in the foxhole, David's steady aim, urging him to ride not for vengeance, but for the honor they'd all sworn. Emily stepped out from under the office awning, her scrubs damp and clinging, carrying 2 steaming mugs from the school's ancient coffee machine. She handed one to Ethan, the warmth seeping through the styrofoam like a tentative truce. "Couldn't sleep in there," she said softly, her breath visible in the chill. Kept replaying it. The skid, the crunch, Noah's eyes going distant. Her gaze drifted to the kids, Sophia now humming a faint lullaby to her brother, the melody fragile against the dawn's hush. Emily had built walls in Willow Creek, tending scraped knees and fevers to outrun the war's echoes, but this fracture exposed them all, her instincts clashing with protocols that prioritized paper over pulse. "I thought coming here would be enough, saving lives without the orders, but they're turning it against me, saying I caused panic." Ethan sipped the bitter brew, the steam curling like smoke signals from a distant fire. "Panic saves lives, Em. Seen it in the sand. Hesitate, and you lose more than a moment." He thought of the Humvee wreck, the way her compressions had synced with his fading heartbeat, pulling him back when surrender whispered sweeter. That debt had chained him to the Viper's code, even in his years of solitude, drifting through neon-lit diners and empty highways, chasing horizons that never healed the hollow. Now, with the club arrayed behind him, 85 strong, from welders to mechanics, all answering a call etched in loyalty. The hollow, filled with purpose, a low rumble building in his core. Victoria ended her call with a sharp snap, striding toward them, heels sinking slightly into the softening ground. "Deputy Grant, this farce is over. The inspectors will handle the bus. Nurse Harper, collect your things. And you bikers, clear out before I file for disorderly conduct." Her eyes raked over the group, lingering on Jack's with thinly veiled contempt, as if their leather and scars were stains on her polished world. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, glancing at his watch. "Ma'am, Tyler's picks are solid. If it's tampering, that's criminal, not administrative." But Victoria waved him off, her smile ablaze. "Criminal? Please, it's budget woes. We can't afford heroes rewriting rules." The words ignited Sophia, who jumped to her feet, blankets slipping from her shoulders. "You're the one rewriting. Nurse M didn't do anything wrong. She fixed Noah when the bus hurt him bad." Her voice cracked, echoing off the brick walls, drawing nods from the Vipers. Ryan, ever the quiet enforcer, pulled up another file on his phone, a grainy email chain from a district insider, forwarded through old service networks, hinting at diverted funds for executive perks. He showed it to Lucas, the screen's glow cutting through the gloom like a flare. The deputy's face hardened, the pieces aligning, skimped maintenance, fudged logs, a nurse scapegoated to bury the mess. Ethan felt the shift, the air thickening with resolve as the first birdsong pierced the rain's aftermath, a tentative trill amid the tension. He placed a hand on Sophia's shoulder, steady as an anchor chain. "Easy, kid. Truth's like a long ride. Takes time, but it gets you home." Turning to Victoria, his tone even but unyielding, he said, "We're not leaving till the light hits this. Call your bosses, pull the strings. But know this. We've chased shadows bigger than yours, and loyalty outlasts every lie." Jax grunted agreement, the Vipers closing ranks subtly, their presence a silent engine revving toward confrontation. As the sun crested fully, gilding the wet lot in golden edges, more vehicles arrived. County inspectors in unmarked vans, their faces neutral but eyes sharp. They cordoned the area, tools clinking like promises forged in steel, while Lucas coordinated, the tide turning inch by inch. Emily watched, hope flickering in her eyes like dawn on chrome, but Ethan sensed the undercurrent. Victoria's call had summoned reinforcements, whispers of higher interference that would demand more than evidence. The road ahead twisted sharper, pulling them toward a moral crossroads where oaths would clash with power and redemption's price would rise. Yet in that moment, as Sophia leaned against Emily, the group stood unbroken, the scent of fresh earth and coffee mingling with the faint ozone of cleared air. The Vipers' vigil held, a family chosen in the crucible of crisis, their engines silent but souls roaring. Trials loomed, but so did the unbreakable bond of promises kept, carrying them forward into the light. If you're feeling this story's pull, hit that like button. It helps these tales of honor reach more roads. The golden light of dawn spilled across the parking lot, turning puddles into molten mirrors that caught the glint of chrome and the weary resolve etched on every face. Ethan Malone stood at the edge of the gathering, his leather vest heavy with the night's damp, the faint scent of cooling rain clinging to the air like a half-forgotten warning. The county inspectors moved with efficient precision, their vans parked in a loose arc, tools unfolding from cases with the soft clink of metal on wet asphalt. Flashlights swept the ground, illuminating tire tracks and scattered debris from the bus's hasty removal, each beam a searchlight probing the shadows of deceit. Sophia Ramirez sat cross-legged on the curb, her small hands twisting the hem of her jacket, eyes fixed on the inspectors as if willing the truth to surface from the earth itself. Noah stirred beside her, murmuring in his sleep, his pale cheeks flushed with the first hints of returning color, a fragile victory in the face of the storm still brewing. Deputy Lucas Grant hovered near the lead inspector, a wiry man named Benjamin Hayes with a clipboard and a gaze sharpened by years of unraveling small-town scandals. "Preliminary looks like tampering, all right, Benjamin said, his voice low but carrying on the crisp morning breeze. Brake lines nicked clean, not worn. Someone knew what they were doing. We'll need the full logs from the district garage. Lucas nodded, glancing toward Victoria Klein, who had retreated to her SUV, the door ajar as she spoke urgently into her phone, her free hand gesturing sharply. The air hummed with tension, the distant call of a crow punctuating the silence like a judge's gavel. Ethan felt it in his bones, the same prickling instinct that had saved him in ambushes overseas, the sense of a larger force circling, ready to strike. Jax leaned on his cane nearby, the wood slick from the rain, his broad frame casting a long shadow that merged with Ethan's. The Viper's leader had pulled strings through the night, old contacts from service days, whispering back fragments of the puzzle. District contracts awarded to a shell company tied to Victoria's brother, maintenance skimped to funnel cash upward. "This ain't just about brakes," Jax muttered, his breath fogging slightly in the chill. "It's the whole rotten frame. We push now, or they bury it deeper." Ethan rubbed his scarred forearm, the ink of a faded promise tattoo, a coiled viper encircling a broken chain, itching under his sleeve. He'd walked away from the club after the war, haunted by the faces of fallen brothers like Christopher and Anthony, their oaths shattered in the desert's unforgiving heat. But Emily's call through Sophia's cry had dragged him back, the weight of that long-ago vow pressing like a throttle hand. Emily Harper emerged from the school office, carrying a thermos of fresh coffee, her steps measured, but her eyes alight with a cautious fire. She offered a cup to Benjamin, who accepted with a nod, the steam rising like a peace offering amid the scrutiny. "I documented everything from the crash," she said, her voice steady, pulling a notebook from her pocket. The pages were filled with hurried notes, timestamps, vitals, the metallic screech of the bus as it twisted, the acrid bite of rubber on road. Noah's pulse was thready, oxygenation dropping fast. I had no choice but to act. Benjamin flipped through it, his expression softening fractionally, the human element piercing the procedural veil. Sophia perked up, scooting closer. "She was like a superhero, Mr. Inspector. The bus made this big boom, and Noah was stuck, not moving. She pushed and pushed until he breathed again." Victoria slammed her car door, striding over with the clip of authority unbroken, her tailored coat now speckled with dew. "This is still under district jurisdiction," she snapped, eyes darting to the inspectors like a hawk spotting intruders. "Nurse Harper's involvement was excessive. We have protocols for a reason. Escalating to ambulances costs the community." The words landed sharp, slicing through the morning calm, and Ethan stepped forward, his boots crunching gravel with deliberate weight. He'd seen this dance before, in briefing rooms where superiors twisted facts to cover tracks, leaving men like him to carry the blame. "Protocols that kill kids," he said, voice low and even, the rumble of unspoken thunder. "Or save them? Your logs say clean, the cuts say otherwise. Which one's the lie?" The confrontation hung there, thick as the mist rolling in from the nearby fields, the scent of wet grass mingling with the oily residue from the impound site. Benjamin straightened, addressing Victoria directly. "Ma'am, if there's evidence of fraud, state investigators get looped in. Tampering on public vehicles, that's felony territory." Her face paled slightly, the mask of control cracking at the edges, but she recovered with a tight smile. "Of course, full cooperation. But these outsiders," she gestured at the Vipers, "are disrupting an official inquiry." Jax chuckled softly, a sound like gravel shifting. "Disrupting? We're witnesses, ma'am. Men who know what happens when corners get cut, on roads or in boardrooms." Ryan and Tyler lingered at the periphery, their phones buzzing with updates from the club's network. A mechanic buddy confirming the tampered parts matched a pattern from other district mishaps, near misses swept under rugs. Ryan showed the thread to Lucas, the deputy's jaw setting firm as he absorbed the scope, Not one bus, but a fleet neglected for profit, lives gambled like poker chips. Sophia tugged at Emily's sleeve, her whisper fierce. They're scared now, like the bad guys in stories. Emily knelt, brushing a damp strand from the girl's forehead, her touch gentle as a battlefield suture. In that moment, Ethan saw the thread connecting them all. The chosen family rising from loss, Emily's hands bridging the gap between yesterday's horrors and today's stand. She'd saved him once, pulling life from the brink amid smoke and sorrow. Now the Vipers repaid it, their loyalty a chain stronger than any cut line. As the inspectors delved deeper, cordoning off a section of the lot with yellow tape that fluttered like caution flags, more arrivals stirred the air, a news van cresting the hill, its antenna slicing the sky, drawn by anonymous tips from the Vipers' far-flung riders. Lights flickered on, cameras rolling as reporters spilled out, microphones extended like probes. Victoria's composure fractured further, her phone calls turning frantic, voices rising in pitch. "This is containment," she hissed to an aide who appeared from nowhere, a young man with a harried look. But the tide had turned. Benjamin called for a full forensic team. The bus's remnants yielding secrets under scrutiny, receipts for subpar parts, emails hinting at kickbacks. Ethan watched the chaos unfold, the dawn sun warming his back like an approving hand. But he sensed the escalation. Victoria's reinforcements would come, higher powers with lawyers and leverage, testing the Viper's resolve. Jax clapped his shoulder, the gesture solid as an oath renewed. "Ride's just starting, Ghost. They push, we push back, not with fists, but truth." Sophia beamed up at them, Noah now awake and pointing at the bikes, wonder lighting his eyes. Emily met Ethan's gaze across the growing crowd, a silent thanks passing between them, laced with the quiet fear of battles yet to come. The parking lot transformed into a hive of activity, voices overlapping in a symphony of accountability. The snap of cameras, the murmur of interviews, the low growl of engines idling as Vipers positioned to block any hasty retreat. Rain's aftermath lingered in the air, fresh and sharp, carrying the promise of clarity amid the gathering storm. Ethan inhaled deeply, the weight of redemption settling deeper, pulling him toward the horizon where loyalty would face its fiercest trial. For Emily, for the kids, for the ghosts that rode with him, the stand held firm, chrome gleaming under the rising sun, a beacon against the encroaching dark. The news van's antenna sliced the morning sky like a declaration, its engine humming to life as reporters fanned out across the parking lot, notebooks and cameras at the ready. Ethan Malone felt the shift in the air, a palpable electric charge that hummed beneath the rising sun's warmth, chasing away the last vestiges of night's chill. The scent of damp earth mingled with the sharp bite of fresh coffee from Emily's thermos, grounding the chaos in something human, tangible. Puddles from the storm reflected the flurry, flashing lights, hurried footsteps, the low murmur of voices building like thunder on the horizon. Sophia Ramirez bounced on her toes beside Noah, her earlier exhaustion burned away by the spectacle, while the boy clutched a Viper's bandana like a talisman, his wide eyes drinking in the scene. Deputy Lucas Grant positioned himself at the cordon, his uniform now rumpled from the long night, directing the media with a firm hand that belied his growing certainty. "Stick to the facts, folks. No speculation," he called, his drawl cutting through the chatter. Benjamin Hayes, the lead inspector, knelt by a cluster of debris markers, his gloves smudged with grease as he bagged a fragment of brake line, the metal glinting accusingly in the light. "This isn't wear and tear," he announced to his team, voice carrying clear. "Deliberate cuts, recent, matches the photos from last night." The words rippled outward, drawing gasps from the gathering crowd. Parents who'd arrived with morning drop-offs, teachers peering from windows, their skepticism fracturing under the weight of evidence. Victoria Klein's face drained of color as a reporter thrust a microphone her way, the lens zooming in on her tightened jaw. She stepped back, her heels catching in a puddle, splashing water like shattered illusions. "This is a misunderstanding," she stammered, but the camera caught every falter, broadcasting her unease to the town and beyond. Ethan watched from his post near the Viper's line, arms crossed over his chest, the leather of his vest creaking softly with each breath. Jack stood beside him, cane planted like a flag in conquered ground, his grizzled features set in quiet triumph. "Told you, Ghost," Jax murmured, the nickname a bridge to their shared past. "Truth rides harder than any lie." Ethan nodded, the knot in his chest loosening for the first time since Sophia's scream had pierced his solitude. The ghosts of Samuel and David, Christopher and Anthony, names carved into his memory like ruts on an old trail, seemed to fade in the daylight, their unfinished oaths fulfilled through this stand. Emily Harper hovered at the edge of the activity, her notebook clutched like a shield, but her posture had straightened, the shadows under her eyes lifting with tentative hope. She knelt to Sophia's level, the girl's energy infectious as she pointed at the reporters. "They're telling everyone now, Nurse M, about how you saved Noah, and how they're the bad ones." Emily's smile was small but genuine, the first real one Ethan had seen since the chaos began. Her hands, those steady hands that had once anchored him in the desert's fury, now resting lightly on the children's shoulders. "It's not just about me, sweetie," she said softly, her voice threading through the noise like a calm river. "It's about all of us keeping our word, like these men did, riding through the storm for a promise they barely remembered." Ryan and Tyler returned from the impound perimeter, their faces streaked with dirt, phones heavy with new data, time-stamped logs from the district's servers, hacked through a sympathetic IT contact in the club's network, revealing a trail of falsified inspections and diverted funds. Ryan handed the device to Benjamin, the inspector's eyes widening as he scrolled. "Kickbacks to a consulting firm? Your brother's outfit, Ms. Klein?" The question hung, pointed and unyielding, and Victoria's aide melted into the crowd, phone to his ear in frantic retreat. The Vipers shifted subtly, their presence a wall of quiet strength. Not advancing but unmovable, engines off but the air still vibrating with their unspoken bond. Ethan felt it deep, a chosen family, forged not in blood, but in the fire of shared scars, pulling him from the isolation he'd worn like armor. As the sun climbed higher, gilding the chrome of the Harleys in warm gold, the county prosecutor's office arrived in an unmarked sedan. A stern woman in a dark suit stepping out to confer with Lucas and Benjamin. Whispers spread, warrants incoming, audits launched, the rot exposed from breaks to boardrooms. Victoria was escorted to her SUV, not in cuffs, but with the weight of impending scrutiny pressing down. Her glare at the group, a final spark of defiance, snuffed by the light. The reporters swarmed Emily then, but she deferred, guiding Sophia and Noah forward. "Ask them," she said, nodding to the Vipers. "They came because promises matter more than protocols." Ethan knelt as the cameras turned his way, Sophia slipping her hand into his, small but fierce. "You did it," she whispered, Noah echoing with a sleepy grin. The flash of bulbs caught the tears in Ethan's eyes, unbidden but cleansing, washing away the dust of years alone. He'd answered a call not his own, unearthing a vow buried under regrets, and in doing so found redemption in the roar of brotherhood renewed. Jax clapped his back, the sound solid as a handshake across miles. "Ride's over for now, brother, but the road, it's ours." By midday, as the lot cleared and statements wrapped, Emily was reinstated on the spot. The district's hasty apology broadcast live, a poetic justice served not with fists, but with unyielding truth. The Vipers mounted up one by one, engines thundering to life in a symphony of farewell, the convoy snaking toward the horizon like a steel river flowing home. Ethan lingered last, watching Emily hug the kids, her laughter light against the playground's familiar hum. "Thank you," she said, meeting his gaze, the desert's echo alive in her eyes, "for remembering." He revved his Harley, the vibration syncing with his pulse, and rode out, the wind whipping away the last shadows. Promises kept, loyalty etched eternal, the family chosen, unbreakable. Willow Creek faded in the rearview, but the light they'd kindled burned on, a beacon for roads yet traveled. If this tale of quiet courage touched your heart, thank you for riding along. Hit subscribe and the bell. We've got more stories of honor and redemption coming your way.